Hello and welcome to episode 72 of the Crash and Ride podcast. I'm Patrick Ferguson. I'm your host. This week's guest is Lilly Hiatt. Lilly is a singer, songwriter, and guitar player based out of Nashville, Tennessee. She's on New West Records, which is based out of Athens, Georgia, right here. Lilly is someone I've been wanting to talk to for a while. I first saw her here in Athens, Georgia on the rooftop of the Georgia Theater, and I thought, what an extraordinary talent. I hope I can get her on the show, and here we are. If this is your first episode of Crash and Ride is a long-form interview podcast where I talk to musicians who survived anxiety, depression, addiction, trauma, really any form of mental distress or mental illness. My thought was that if we could get together and have open and honest conversations, we could start to maybe recognize some of our sadness and the sadness of others and find some common ground and start to get better. As I'm recording this, it's the early afternoon of Friday, October 9th, 2020. We are 209 days into the COVID-19 quarantine. I don't know about you. I'm a little tired of this shit. Before COVID-19, I was a professional touring and studio musician. The last 6-7 months, I've been a stay-at-home dad. And man, I don't hate that. I've had a really nice time, but I know a lot of us are facing economic precarity and a lot of really scary shit, and I hope you're doing okay. If you go to the website, crashandridepodcast.com, and go to the resources page, I'm steady compiling as many local resources as I can there and national resources for people struggling with mental distress, struggling with suicidal ideation, struggling with all of the things that we're faced with now that our livelihood has essentially been canceled until further notice. I really hope that you're able to make ends meet right now and that you're just holding up under the incredible pressure of this open-ended anxiety crisis of not knowing when or if we're ever going to get to play music again in rooms full of people. Later in the show, there's a little pre-recorded break with some information about Backline and the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at Nutrispace, but I also want to make sure you know about the National Alliance on Mental Illnesses helpline, 1-800-950-6264. That's 1-800-950-NAMI between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern. The National Alliance on Mental Illness is a national coalition of community groups that can maybe plug you into resources in your area if you're in crisis. So give them a call between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 1-800-950-6264, 1-800-950-NAMI. It has been an extraordinary week for the Crash and Ride podcast. A couple of things have happened recently. I was on Conan Neutron's podcast, Protonic Reversal, and that's got a big international reach, and I've started to hear from people in places like Australia and New Zealand and people from France. I noticed on the listener map that is provided as part of my hosting that I've got a listener in Slovenia now. Welcome. I'm particularly fond of the idea of having a listener in Ljubljana because my wife's family's from there, which I think is super cool. Also, I got a nice shout out from the Nashville scene from this incredibly talented music writer, Charlie Zellane. And things are going great. Thanks for spreading the word, folks. Also, completely by accident, I discovered that there's a whole raft of really kind reviews of the podcast on the Apple podcast website, which I'm so grateful for. Thank you very much. There's a whole bunch of 5-star ratings of the podcast, and then one lonely, angry 1-star rating, which thank you too. Having at least one hater lets me know I'm doing something right. I have a couple of quick announcements. Crash and Ride is brought to you in part by Greer Amplification. Greer Amps builds the best boutique effects pedals available. If you're looking for an overdrive, boost, fuzz, compressor, or tremolo that is rugged, road-tested, and at home, on stage, in the studio, or in your living room, Greer has a pedal for you. Nick and his staff strive to build the best products around with the best tone you've ever heard. They believe in their products, and they stand behind them too, backing each one up with a lifetime warranty to the original owner. Each Greer Amps product is hand-built in Athens, Georgia, USA. Go to www.greeramps.com or visit your favorite music retailer today. Crash and Ride is also brought to you in part by Jittery Joe's, a local coffee roaster based here in Athens, Georgia. They have a special espresso blend named after the podcast. You can get Crash and Ride espresso, whole bean or ground, in cans from our website at crashandridepodcast.com. Or in COVID-19 times, I would just assume that you buy that coffee from my friend Seth Hendershot at Hendershot's Coffee here in Athens, Georgia. My friend Seth owns Hendershots. It's a really extraordinary live music venue and coffee shop here in Athens, Georgia. Seth is a musician. He's an extraordinary guy. He's a really good dad. just the kindest man you've ever met. And he runs this great venue, which is operating at a fraction of its normal capacity because of the quarantine. But he has ramped up his online business at his website at hendershotsathens.com. That's Hendershotsathens.com. hendershotsathens.com. You can get the Crash and Ride Espresso blend there. You can get the Widespread Panic coffee blend there. That's the famous jam band from Athens, Georgia. They've teamed up with Jittery Joe's to come up with their own roast. You can get the Kishibashi blend there. Kishibashi, of course, is the famous indie rock band from Athens, Georgia. You can get all sorts of Hendershots merchandise there. That's t-shirts, caps, stickers, whatever. And all of that money goes to support Hendershots, which is a fantastic live music venue here in Athens, and helps Seth make payroll for his staff of wonderful employees who are also all creatives who live here in Athens, Georgia. Lots of poets, playwrights, musicians, painters, just every kind of creative person works at Hendershots, and they're some of the best people in the world. Hendershotsathens.com. Help protect live music in Athens, Georgia. So as I mentioned earlier, the Nashville scene mentioned Crash and Ride very favorably on the web and in their magazine. And, of course, Nashville Scene is the alternative weekly in Nashville, Tennessee. And they pointed to the Crash and Ride website at crashandridepodcast.com, and it kind of caught me off guard. I haven't updated that in a couple of weeks, and I feel real bad about it. But even on a good day, I run around busier than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. So I'm trying to get the website and the YouTube channel completely up to speed, but you should currently be able to find every single episode of the podcast on your favorite podcast aggregator. Just search for Crash and Ride, or on the Patreon site at patreon.com/crashandride. And there are links to all of those things on the front page of the Crash and Ride website at crashandridepodcast.com. Okay, Lilly Hiatt. As I mentioned, I saw her for the first time on the rooftop of the Georgia Theater a couple of years ago, and she blew me away. She was traveling with a really just tight, solid, professional band. Alan Jones is the drummer from that particular lineup. He's a guy I met at South by Southwest a couple of years ago through our mutual friend Lemuel Hayes, a former guest of the show. And I was up there just to hang out, and then was just totally taken with the show, and then immediately followed Lilly on every form of social media she was on. And since then, I've watched her career from a distance, and a couple of times thought, I think she'd be a great guest for the show. And then at some point, she mentioned that she had been sober for a number of years, and I thought, okay, I'm going to talk to her. But I talked to another mutual friend of mine, and they said, I don't know if Lily's really shy. She's really private. So I went into the interview maybe a little trepidatious, not wanting to ask too personal questions. And actually, when I was editing, there was a couple of things I took out because, you know, I want to respect people's desire to maintain a separate private and public life. But I found Lilly to be really warm and generous, despite her sort of maybe a little discomfort with having to talk about things that were so personal into a microphone. But I just think she's really fantastic. And, you know, I haven't mentioned up to this point that she is the daughter of John Hiatt, the just stupendously famous singer-songwriter who also lives in Nashville. Because, you know, once again, her material, it stands on its own. But also, she comes from, you know, a family of writers, and really, really great ones. And I'm just really grateful that we had this conversation.
Honestly, my favorite thing I've purchased all of quarantine, I guess. We're still calling it.
Isn't it funny how, like, so many people whose lives were about art and travel and living minimally, like, got locked in and they were like, flatware. You know, like,
yes, totally. Yes. A little time to kind of domesticate yourself for a second, you know?
A friend of mine was like, I've had 6 glasses of wine, I'm buying a mattress tonight on social media last night. And I was like, okay, you've been in quarantine for like 5 months and now you're just buying a mattress, but all right.
Yeah, it's like, well, I guess we're at the point where it's kind of like, okay, might as well, if you can afford to, you know, the small comforts that make your home a little nicer, like a nice mattress or a good pair of headphones, might be worth it right now.
Well, so I have sort of followed you since Trinity Lane came out. I saw you on the rooftop of the Georgia Theater then, and didn't know Alan yet, but then met him later. Was like, oh, I've seen you play drums, and we got to know each other, and I started following you on social media, and so I got really interested in your work because that was a really great show at the theater.
Oh, cool. That was really fun. That was a while ago. I had a great time that night. On the rooftop, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was so fun. Oh, yeah, and it rained almost, and I think we went to see some cool stuff. Cindy from the B-52s. Cindy
Right.
Wilson, is that her name?
Yeah, Cindy Wilson.
Oh, my God. Her band played, and it was so awesome. It was so good.
Yeah, that was kind of like a Roman candle, and then it burned really bright, shot off a lot of sparks for a minute, and then kind of just went away. It was really sad.
Well, hopefully she'll be back doing that, whenever we can get back out. And more. I would like to hear more of that. It was really cool.
Yeah, Lemuel, who we were just talking about, was the drummer on that and was sort of musical.
Oh, cool.
He and Ryan Monahan, the guitar player, were sort of music directors on that gig. They kind of, I guess, all of the guys in that band had a role. Everybody was writing. They were all writing together, and it was just an insanely talented bunch of musicians.
It's always neat. See.
So you were born in Los Angeles.
Uh-huh.
Your father,
I was.
of course, is John Hiatt. I mean, that's not a big secret.
Yeah, no secret there.
And then you came to live in Nashville at your father's farm. Is that correct?
Yeah, we lived in town for a while, and then and they got the farm in 1993. So
Yeah.
lived in the city from 85 to 93, and then moved out to the farm, which was just in Franklin.
Yeah, you were just teeny tiny in 1985, right? You were just like a year old.
Uh-huh. Yep.
I read that your mom passed before you were a year old.
Yeah, she did. She did right about as I was a year. So, and we moved to Nashville not too long after that. So, yeah. Was on the move from an early age. I was.
Yeah.
Took a cross-country trip at 1. So.
Yeah. So you kind of grew up in the music industry in a way. Your dad, of course, very successful, incredibly prolific. And you started playing when you were 12?
Yeah, that's when I wrote before then, and I sang, but I knew that if I really wanted to write a song, I would have to learn how to play guitar. So that's the age that I started to realize I needed to learn some chords to make something.
Yeah. I feel I've had this sort of, I've followed you on social media, and I'm sort of aware that you've been really frank about struggling with depression and some other stuff. And was that something that manifested itself at an early age, or after you sort of came into your own as a writer, or when did you sort of start to realize that you were struggling?
Well, I mean, I think there was always a part of me from early on that seemed to be really emotional and not know what to do with those emotions or how to deal with them. And I don't know. I think I still question what my depression is or means, and don't completely understand it. But it's always just kind of been a part of me, and it's changed over the years in a lot of different ways and shown its face in different ways. So, but I also came from a family that was I went to therapist at age 6, so it was not
Yeah.
a new concept for me to be, and I studied psychology in school. That stuff is kind of threaded through my life, the kind of addressing mental health issues has been encouraged in my family, but everybody's kind of taken their own route with that, So.
Yeah. Do you have you ever thought that you might have ADHD or like an attention deficit or executive function disorder of any kind?
Yeah, it's interesting you asked that because I didn't really think about that until later when I had a doctor be like, you know what? Like, it was when I was first attempting to quit drinking. We were talking about that, and she was like, I think you have ADD. And I was like, oh, my God, I think I do. And I'm like, I can get really focused. And I don't have it severely. Like, when I want to focus, I can focus. But I definitely can be all over the place, and it's definitely, like, accentuated by anxiety. It'll scatter me a billion different places. But the funny thing about that is she tried to give me some, we tried some treatments for that, and it just turns out like any sort of medication for that was not great news for me. So yeah. I've tried to learn how to manage that, and everybody is so different. So I'm just really speaking specifically from my experience. It's an interesting thing to learn. For me, like physical movement helps me manage that.
Yeah.
So
the reason I asked is because I have struggled with ADD my whole life, particularly quarantine, but we'll get into that in a minute. There's something about this, like, sort of having to pay attention to what you touch and who you're around and who's wearing a mask and who's not, and how long is this going to last? When am I going to be able to get back to work as a drummer and stuff like that? Has just destroyed my executive function. Like, I just run around in circles all day, like starting 20 things,
Yeah, that can be intense and exhausting too.
Yeah.
So.
But one of those sort of things that typifies, like, the ADD thing is hyperfocus. Like, I can fall into a task and, like, look up and it's been 3 hours and it's like, what just happened? Where was I? And, sometimes it's practicing guitar. Sometimes it's like fucking around on the command line on my website doing Linux stuff because I used to do some of that. But I feel like when you couple that, like, with anxiety, I don't know what your experience is with it, but I can fixate on something dumb I said or something impolite or I've hurt somebody and fall into, like, a hyper-focused anxiety trap with that and get really anxious and sad.
Yes, I understand that. It's never very helpful for me when I'm super fixated on something based outside of reality, being a thought or a perception or something like that. And like you said, like, sometimes it can be to an advantage, like fixating on a project or, a song, or it can really help me complete some things. But yeah, it gets out of hand when it starts to, when the focus starts to be on, like, fixating on thoughts doesn't seem to be always the best. Unless it's a thought that I want to write into a line for a song, then it's okay. But I know what you mean. It's hard not to do that.
Yeah, I think, though, that, like, getting good at things involves a certain amount of obsessive focus, and I think that's why some of the people who were, like, the best at things were often people who were focusing in order to escape or focusing as a function of their anxiety. Like, it's not an accident, I don't think, that someone like Jaco Pastorius, who was arguably one of the great electric bass players of all time, just when he had to sit still, had to self-medicate to the point that he just pushed himself over into a kind of psychosis.
Yes. No, it's, like you said, there's both ends of the coin. It can be detrimental and it can be, like, magnificent to be obsessing over something, So.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like the scariest roller coaster, and the biggest theme park of all time. That this kind of weird ability to, like, in my case, sit there with a practice pad and a pair of sticks and and do drum rudiments for like 4 hours. Like, that's not normal, but hey, now I get paid to play drums, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it enables you to just get better at your trade or whatever that is. So.
Yeah. So you left Nashville to go to college. You went to Denver, majored in psychology, started a band there, right?
Yes, I did. That's all I really wanted to do in college, honestly. But I was also like really happy to be learning and meeting people, and
yeah,
you know. But I wanted to find artists and weird people like that I could create stuff with, and I did. So it was cool.
Yeah, I guess maybe people don't realize that the Nashville of the 90s that you grew up in was really different from Nashville now.
Yes, for sure.
That there was definitely like a company town vibe in the 90s, and like there was a certain way to play music, and if you were outside of that circle, then it was kind of like there wasn't really a live music scene. When I would come there in the 90s all the time to play the Cannery or Exit In or some other like house party or something, and it was definitely like, oh, this isn't a live music town at all.
Yeah, my kind of understanding of like the Nashville music scene through the years really begins, I mean, as a kid I saw it through my dad's career, but for my own, so I went to college outside of Nashville, and so I came back in 2006, but it was really different then. It was like a really cool time because Nashville had this really kind of badass kind of indie scene. It was small, but it was happening, you know? So it was beginning to... I remember when I moved back being like, God, Nashville got really cool, you know? So,
yeah.
And now it's so cool that every freaking person wants to come here. So,
yeah, I mean,
God.
I love Nashville. I've said this on the podcast a lot of times, though. Like, I feel like it may have overshot a little bit. Like, you know, there was a time there where if you wanted a cup of coffee after like 11 a.m., you were out of luck because, you know, it was a town on a very blue-collar schedule. You know, coffee was for breakfast, and that ends at 10:30, you know. But now, like, you can get iced coffee any time of the day or night, but it's going to cost like $8. You know?
Yeah, I mean, there's still a low-key element to it that I find in my neighborhood spots, and you know, it's a different city than it used to be, but it's certainly like forever a really inspiring city to me with like a lot happening. For as frustrated as I can be at moments, I've always had a kind of love-hate with Nashville being from here, because that's just home, you know? It's kind of like, but in a really good way. But yes, it has gotten a lot busier, and that's just something that it's changed the tempo of the town for sure, you know? So. Yeah.
Did you feel a lot of pressure as a songwriter because of your dad's success?
Yeah, I think that like most of that, yes, I did, but mostly because of myself wanting to be really good because he was good, you know? So I didn't really even consider what other people would expect of me until I started getting a little more out there, and I saw somebody like say something about that, and I was like, oh yeah, people are gonna fucking, you know, maybe hold you to a standard or be looking for you to be as good or not as good or something. But, you know, like, I honestly haven't worried that much about that. It's more, I want to do a good job. And like, I come from a family of writers. Mm-hmm. You know, there are other writers in my family, and something that's really important to me, and melody is, and I just, you know, I don't want to like come out being his kid and suck, you know, like that'd be horrible. So I just be like so embarrassed. So yeah, I wanted to be good. I still want to be good, you know. I'm always trying to be better because I still don't look at myself as like really good. I mean, I believe in myself, but I'm never satisfied with my work completely, you know. So
yeah. I mean, it's not like Nashville isn't awash in the sons and daughters of other songwriters.
There are a lot of second generation, third generation musicians here, and a lot of them whose parents maybe aren't, known on a national or international level, but grew up with musician parents, and like there's a certain standard and there's a life they've lived and been near because of all that. And it's a neat thing to have in common, and there are a lot of really talented people around.
I guess Shooter Jennings is there, and Andrew Sovine, who's Red Sovine's grandson, and I don't know. I guess I can't. I'm drawing a blank on how many other people have come up through the years. So you moved your band with you from Denver to Nashville. How long did that last? Because I guess your solo career, your first record, solo album came out in 2012.
Yeah, I think we moved in 2006. We were a band till maybe 2008 is when I decided I loved that band. But we worked really hard and we were doing a good job, but I think all of us wanted to do our different things. So I decided I just want to sing. I mean, I wrote all the songs for that band. I think one of the songs the guitarist Eric had written, but we worked them all out together, and we worked the parts out together. And I just got to a point where I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to write the songs by myself, and I don't want to have to bring them to a band to nail parts. I just want to have them at a place that I can have be my own name on it. I was ready for that. And, with as a solo artist, I mean, I always play with a band and we collaborate and they all add their parts, but it's kind of like I have the song, so.
Yeah. Well, it's a different relationship as a drummer for me. If there's a band that I'm in that I'm one quarter of, and we've been a band for almost 30 years now. But then there's times when someone else's name is on the marquee, and I come in and they say, "Here, play this beat," and that's my job.
Yeah. It's an interesting relationship being a part of any band, really. So, yeah. But I love it. I love collaborating with people. But yeah, I like writing on my own and kind of trying to figure out the heart of the sound and the melody before I play it with a band.
Yeah. So you've been fairly open in the past about your sobriety. I'm sort of curious when you got sober and how your life changed, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now.
Yeah. Well, when I was 27, it was really interesting, my relationship with alcohol, because it was a really great friend for me for a while. And it kind of, I don't want to say carried me through college, but it opened up this part of me. When I got to college, I was partying with my friends. I was meeting all these people. I felt good about myself, and it was all okay. And then when I moved back to Nashville with my band and kind of hit real life in a way, I just slowly noticed myself leading more into that than I ever had. And coming from where I come from, where, addiction isn't taken lightly in my family and stuff. And so I had a bit of knowledge about it. And I don't know, when I was 27, I just got to the point where I was really sick of feeling like shit all the time, and I was sick of messing up and having the core of that mess up be alcohol related.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really gotten into great trouble yet, but I knew that I was mentally in a really unhealthy place, and I quit for a few months, and then I drank again, and it was so shitty. The 2 weeks I drank again and I quit for 3 more months, and then I drank again over a weekend, and I was just like, you just can't do this to yourself. It didn't make me happy anymore. It made me really sad to drink, and I just I haven't drank since, and I thought my life would get better if I eliminated that. And so I did, so.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's been a good change. The first few years were really lonely, and I was really shy, and being 27 and not drinking is hard. All your friends are hanging out, drink, or a lot of them do, but carrying it into my 30s has been cool because I see more and more people kind of, changing their relationship with that to best fit their life, or sometimes that doesn't happen, and I don't know. I'm just glad that I stepped away from that. It's made everything easier for me.
Yeah, for me, early sobriety was marked by a lot of like, I guess these are what feelings are about. Like I had been stuffing a lot of stuff because I started using really young, and you talked about being lonely. I also got sober earlier than most people, like you did, and I had a lot of anxiety and depression that I didn't really have a healthy set of coping mechanisms for, but also didn't have my unhealthy coping mechanism for anymore. And that was a tough couple of years.
Yeah, it's hard to be learning that stuff as an adult, but it's doable, So.
Did you channel it into your playing, or how did you sort of fill up those anxious hours?
Yeah, I definitely spent a lot of time writing songs and, spent time. I still have those anxious hours all the time and have to figure out how to occupy myself. So it's an ongoing journey to kind of figure out what can keep my hands busy in a productive way, or my mind busy.
That's been kind of the big challenge in quarantine for me, is like getting spun out just by the open-endedness of it, and not knowing like when am I going to be able to get back to work,
Yeah, it's hard to consider all that and have a conclusion. There really isn't one right now for me, at least. So I'm but then if I really think about that, like there never has been anyhow. So
yeah,
no,
that's true.
you never know. So I guess it's like good to do what you can with what you've got, So.
Yeah, you had a record that came out like right when all this started. 2020, March of 2020. Walking Proof came out, and like I would assume that you had originally planned to just go out and burn up the road promoting that, and then we all had to sit at home.
Yes. Having that come out in March was incredibly painful, but I'm really glad that it did. And, but just like any musician or a lot of people that aren't musicians, like plans were canceled, the rugs were pulled out from under us and stuff. And I was really, really, really bummed about that for a long time. And I feel like just the last month I've kind of been able to get myself to a place of, rather than, lamenting what could have been, getting ready for what's going to be and accepting, whatever is happening. For me,
People love that record, though. Paste Magazine, best top 25 albums of 2020. And you've been on New West for every record, is that right?
Yeah, my first two records were on Normal Town Records, which is an imprint label of New West. But yes, I have worked with them for 8 years now. So, that's been a good relationship for me. And the cool thing about records is that they're there, so it's not going anywhere. There's plenty of time for songs to make their way to somebody's ears. So.
Yeah, there was a band I worked with years ago when I was doing studio engineering, and I hesitate to call myself a producer because I'm no Adam Landry, but I do stuff and help bands. And they put out a record, and they didn't really burn up the road, and didn't sell a ton of copies, and they were really bummed. And I was like, you guys, look, this is just setting the stage for the record that will break through. And there's nothing more frustrating than falling in love with a band that's released like a 6-song EP and there's nothing else. this is the foundation that you'll continue to build on.
Yeah, totally. Those albums are there for whoever to discover and keep going, you know? Like, I mean, for me, it's been a nice lesson in terms of not hinging so much upon one bit of work, and just to keep creating and keep, you know, making things and to not get so fixated, like we were talking about, on one thing, because I was really fixated on this record, and I had incredibly high hopes for what I thought would happen this year. None of it's happened, but other amazing things have happened, and that's the case a lot of times. So I realized, like, just make another one and another one and another one, you know? Like, I have songs from years ago that people just now hear, and that's cool, you know?
Back when I was a hippie carpenter, between tours, you know, my early musician days, I worked with this guy who was an old hippie carpenter, incredibly sweet guy, and it was one rainy day. We were in the shop because we couldn't work outside. We were just, like, farting around. And he put on a recording of Ben Kingsley reading the Bhagavad Gita, which I was like, oh, God. You know, I wasn't really in a place where I was kind of receptive to Eastern religion or whatever. And yet, like, as we were sort of, like, sanding cabinets or whatever, like, I was struck by, you know, there's this scene in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is talking to Arjuna, and he says, you should become attached to action, not the fruits of action. And like a light bulb went on in my head, like, this is how I should approach working as an artist. Like, don't make records because you want to sell a bunch of records or like buy a nice car or like any of these material realizations that you would get from being materially successful. Focus on the work. And then there's like 10 minutes later in this text, he gets to good and bad outcomes are beyond your control, so you have to apply yourself with diligence and honesty, and then you're successful whether or not things come out the way you expect them to or not, because there's so many factors in the world outside of your control. And I was like, man, that's a lot here for an artist. And so I've kind of held that particular set of realizations close as I work as an artist. Like, I just have to remember that, number one, I should become attached to the art, not the rewards for the art. And two, whatever happens is, like, clearly you put out this amazing record. Everybody is raving about how great Walking Proof is. And then we all have to sit inside for 5 months because it's not safe to breathe each other's air. It's really not fair. And yet there's no arguing that Lilly Hiatt didn't make an amazing record. Like, it's a great record.
Well, thank you. And yeah, honestly, the action is really a lot of the fulfillment there. So that's a good thing to keep in mind because, you know, outcomes can be swayed by numerous factors, and none of which we usually have control over. So,
yeah,
you know, you can set things up however you want to, but all sorts of elements could play out in a different way. So,
you know, on Trinity Lane, you worked with Michael Trent and Carrie Ann Hurst from Shovels and Rope, and I don't know them, but I am consistently blown away. Like, I'll be somewhere and there'll be music playing. This happens less now, of course, during quarantine, but back in the day, I'd be in a coffee shop and hear music that I thought, man, this is really, like, scratching the itch. This is really good shit. And I'll be like, who is this? Oh, that's Carrie Ann Hurst, or it's Shovels and Rope. And how did your creative relationship with them come about, and what was it like making a record with them?
Well, I knew, of course, of Shovels and Rope, and I knew Michael and Carrie Ann. Neither one did I know well, but I'd met them, and they're really sweet and cool. And Carrie Ann she's from Nashville, so we knew a lot of the same people. But a woman, Kim Bowie, at my record label, actually suggested Michael Trent, and I was like, interesting. I didn't know he made records, and she, they make all their own records, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I mean, I think I already knew they made "Oh Be Joyful," but yeah, they do all their own stuff. So I just started talking with him, and the conversation got better and better, and we just made a plan and went there for a couple weeks. It was really fun, and went there with my band.
Did you record at their place?
Yeah, I've recorded. They have a studio now, but and they had a studio then, but they have a separate studio now. But when we did our record, it wasn't finished yet, and the studio was in the top of their house, and it was really cool. I've actually made, I guess the last 2 records I made were in someone's house, and that's a neat experience. So, yeah, it was fun. Working with Michael was awesome. Carrie Ann was around the second week, and she was like, make us amazing dinners that were just insanely good. And just a very cool person. They're very good people, and let us right into their kind of home for a while, so it was neat.
Yeah, I'd love to maybe work on a record that they were on, or just hang out. They just seem really centered and positive and have a real power in their work.
They are. They're cool, and they do a really admirable job of being musicians, and that is their life, but they also have this beautiful life in addition to that is they've made their own world for themselves, and it's a good place. It's a good spot, what they've got going on out in Johns Island. It's like a haven. So
there was a guy I know who was kind of deep in the music industry, and it's sort of shipwrecked now because it doesn't really, like, it's not really a music industry as the way there was before. He was A&R, and I played a Boxcar by Shovels and Rope. I was like, you've got to hear this, and because I think that song is phenomenal. And he said, yeah, I don't really see the commercial potential of this. And I was like, hey, there's a song there, man. Like, I was just like flummoxed at like his sort of lack of ability to hear the song as opposed to hear what he could sell the song for. And I thought, man, you just don't fucking get it. And that was the last time I took him into music. Boxcar was the one that broke our... It's like, if you can't see how brilliant this is, like, I don't know if we're going to talk about music anymore. It was really funny. Yeah, that's an interesting reaction. It's like, okay, but what about that song? Yeah, it's so good. You know, I mean, Boxcar is the kind of song, you know, that goes over the closing credits of a really brilliant film. And he was just like, I don't know if there's a place for this on radio. I'm like, nobody listens to the radio anymore, man. I mean, you know, it's interesting with that, but what really constitutes commercial potential anyway? Because, I mean, a good song's a good song, so yeah, you never know what can be, you know, become that sort of thing. Yeah, it's true. Tell me about making Walking Proof. You said you made the last 2 records in a house. I don't know much about how you made this most recent record. I made Walking Proof at Lincoln Parrish's house. So he has a studio in the bottom of his house, and it's a beautiful studio. And yeah, I made it out there kind of over a few months' time. And yeah, it was really fun. It was nice to be in his home because, you know, there's coffee and, you know, a dog running around outside, and it's just like a relaxed environment, you know. So. Do you feel like being in a home studio allows you to kind of relax more? Like, there's not this sort of sense that, like, the clock's running, ma'am, this is going to cost you $1 million. Oh, man. My dogs are determined to be part of this interview tonight. I don't know what this is about.
I get it. I have only made records the first 2 records I made weren't in houses, but it's always been a pretty lax scenario. I've never punched in on the clock or been I'm draining. It's usually been a situation of hey, can you make it for this much? Yeah, we can. Okay, so we go to wherever that place is and we do that in the amount of time we can. So
yeah.
I've only worked in pretty chill studios. I've never been at to Ocean Way or anything. I mean, I have, but not for my own project. So
sure.
I'm not sure what that feels like, and I'm sure I'll know at some point.
I've been in both situations where we've been in a home studio and things have been super relaxed and hey, let's take that drum set apart and put pillows inside everything and see what that sounds like. And I've also been at the $800 a day studio where should we do another take of that? Nope. It's just moving forward constantly.
Yep. Well, it's good to know how to work in all different kinds of environments. I think it's an asset. So
I saw that you toured with John Moreland.
Yeah.
I think he's really brilliant, but he's I don't know anything about him.
Oh, he's really cool. He's awesome. That was one of my favorite tours I've ever done. And he's a great guy, and he's super talented, and he draws a really cool audience of, people that just want to hear good songs. And, we had a really good time on that tour because we went out west, and it was cool. It was cool to be out there with him and his wife and his tour manager, who are good friends of mine, too. We had a really fun time, and I was driving myself on that tour, so that was cool. Just kind of seeing all that scenery through my car window on my own and stuff. It was fun.
Hey, Crash and Ride would like to let you know about a new industry-wide initiative focused on mental health called Backline. Backline is a hub for artists, industry professionals, and their families to quickly and easily access mental health and wellness resources. Backline is partnered with leading support organizations and care providers to streamline access to services specifically geared towards the music industry. Go to www.backline.care to get the support that you need to thrive both on and off the road. The way that Backline works is you contact them via their website or their 800 number, and they will connect you with a caseworker. That caseworker will be familiar with resources in your area to get you the mental health care that you need. If you need to talk to a therapist, they can put you in touch with a therapist. If you need to talk to a psychiatrist and be evaluated for meds, they have a list of psychiatrists. They have resources for inpatient therapy. They can put you in touch with sober companions. If you need someone to travel with you while you're on the road to help you stay out of trouble, Backline is a really end-to-end comprehensive solution for people who are struggling in the music industry. Now, a little closer to home, if you're in the Athens, Georgia area and you're a musician struggling with anxiety and depression, you can contact Nutrispace at 706-227-1515 or go to nuci.org. That's nuchi.org. Nutrispace is a nonprofit musicians resource focused on suicide prevention. Here's how Nutris works. If you contact them and you say, hey, look, I'm in crisis, whether you're a musician or not, they'll connect you with resources in the Athens, Georgia area. If you're a musician, that health care will be subsidized. In my own case, I was able to see a counselor for $15 or $20 a session. If you're not a musician, they'll do their best to connect you with low-cost or sliding scale options for mental health care in Athens. Nutrispace provides a lot of resources for musicians in the Athens area. They have low-cost practice spaces. They have a gear sale where they're constantly selling secondhand gear. They've got a low-cost recording studio. They're really just an amazing asset to the Athens, Georgia music scene, but their primary mission is helping people who are depressed or anxious get better. Go to nuci.org, that's nuchi.org, or call 706-227-1515. And finally, no matter where you are, if you're struggling with anxiety and depression and you're contemplating self-harm, you can always call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-TALK. It's 24/7. It's free. It's confidential. They have trained volunteers to help get you through your crisis and get you the help that you need. Call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. been sort of kind of a fan of yours on social media, there've been a couple of posts in the last few years where you've been like, hey, I like me, I like my body, fuck this Nashville pressure to not eat food. And like, I wondered, like, is that still happening? Is that still part of what it's like to be, especially for a woman, the singer-songwriter in Nashville, or is that sort of kind of going away?
I think there are all sorts of pressures, and I think for, certainly for women, but I think for anybody in any sliver of public eye, like there's a bit of, there's vanity involved with that, and there's an element of self-consciousness that comes along with that. And like, I think it's, everybody has a different relationship with how they see themselves or how they perceive that they should be seen. And I think it's a really intimate kind of process to get to a healthy place with that on your own, or create a boundary so that you're not, for me, creating a boundary between what I show and who I am is important, because how people see me or whatever can't be what I base my self-worth off of, or how I think even people see me. And it's hard not to do that for anyone, not just entertainers. Like, we live in the age of social media, and like, it's kind of like this, like everything is encouraged to be, revealed in one way or another. And it's just kind of, it's an individual thing. Like, what do you want to put out there? What are you comfortable putting out there? What makes you feel like shit? What makes you feel good, And I do have plenty of issues with my, most people. I'm not like 100% comfortable in my skin, but I am more so than I used to be. And it's important to me to kind of protect that however I can, whether it just means like taking good care of myself or like taking a break from social media or whatever, like just creating that, and not basing all of my worth off like how I look. I mean, of course, but it's hard not to want to look good and show that you look good or whatever, and it's okay to want to do that, but it can't be everything, and what does that even mean? You have to feel good.
Yeah. I felt like those posts, though, were a really great way of setting a boundary. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen that Simpsons episode where Lisa's trying to talk to the bus driver, and he's like, don't make me tap the sign. And there's a sign there. I don't remember what the sign says, but it's like, like, I felt like those... Like,
don't talk.
Right. I felt like those social media posts were something you could refer back to, like, don't make me tap the sign. Like, I've set this boundary, and don't fucking yank my chain about it. I was really impressed with that.
Well, it's really interesting to me how on social media, how easy it is for people to say just very, very hateful things about appearances and stuff. Like, that makes me feel sensitive no matter who it's regarding. Anytime somebody comments negatively on somebody's appearance, it hurts me, because I'm like, hey, I'm like a firm believer that beautiful inner beauty translates to outer beauty. It is a real thing to me. And I'll never be okay with like criticizing somebody's appearance. That's fucked up, So, and it's weird because we're all kind of trained to do it in a way, because we grow up seeing shit on Hollywood and certain, different stereotypes getting presented of how somebody should look or be. And, it's hard not to have a distorted perception of what constitutes beauty, Yeah.
My wife's an actor, and so there's tons of pressure on, especially women almost exclusively women actors to a point. And now she's a director and she does casting, and she's she's absorbed and rebelled against that pressure and those lessons, and now she casts people of color in parts that have been traditionally cast as white, and she casts people of all different shapes and sizes, and every now and then she'll get a little pushback from an assistant director or someone else, and like, yeah, she doesn't play with that. She'll turn to people and go, do you want to explicitly say why you don't want a black actress playing Ophelia? Because I want to hear you say it. And then of course people back down because they don't want to say that. They want to imply it, you know.
Well, it's good to challenge those sort of things and to not play into that bullshit, you know. And it's strong to reject those sorts of preconceived notions of whatever this is or that is, and
sure.
and just try to trudge forward in a way that's true and real.
Yeah.
You know.
So I want to talk a little bit about how you take care of yourself. You said that physical movement helps you sort of battle your anxiety. So do you exercise every day? Do you meditate? Are you still active with, do you go to meetings and stuff? Or like, what is taking care of yourself like for you?
Well, it can look like different things at different times. Generally, I have to exercise. I'm not like a crazy hardcore exerciser, but if I do move around like a pretty good amount every day. And I do stuff on my yoga mat, like little videos and stuff. And I usually take a really good walk or hike if I can. And, yeah, but sometimes also taking care of myself means, completing something I've been procrastinating on so that my mind can relax a little more, or getting all my dishes done and doing my laundry and kind of setting my house up in a way that's calm. So, it's like the body needs different things at different times. And another part of taking care of myself is to, like, not beat myself up when I'm, like, entering into, like, kind of a manic time, because that happens, and it's much easier for me to deal with if I just kind of let it happen, and rather than being really mad about it happening. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And just allowing myself to go where I need to go. Or if I'm bummed out, like, in feeling slow and sad, like, moving slow and not getting a lot done, rather than being like, you're a piece of shit. Like, sometimes taking care of yourself is just like, and that's okay at the moment. So, but usually exercise is a constant. I need it or else I'm depressed. That's for sure.
Yeah. I've finally gotten to a point in my life where, like, I can accept those nights when I need to sleep for 10 hours and those nights when I sleep for like 3 is just part of this weird roller coaster of living in my body, and that's just what happens. And I don't spend a lot of time like, man, you should look into some meds for this weird thing you do or anything like that, because it's just a total waste of time,
Well, everybody has a relationship that's different with those sort of things, and I've tried a lot of different medicines in my life. I've never found the magic cure for myself, but I wouldn't, I've had moments of being really helped by that. I currently don't take any medicines, but they're not off the table. It's just kind of like, and I do okay, like, but I also have people that are really dear to me that, they swear by that, and it's helped them greatly. So I try to just be open about it. I mean, for myself, I've definitely been stubborn about, I like holistic methods of healing a lot. But there's also been times where I'm like, I could probably use a little more help, whether it be like get some therapy or open up to somebody or try this, sort of thing. Just try it. Like, I have to remember that sometimes.
I'm currently not doing meds. There have been times in my life where I took things to sort of level me out. But I've thought about it. I tried to do the ADD meds thing, and it was like someone had just I had surreptitiously done an 8-ball. I was like, this isn't good. This isn't going to work for me.
Yeah, that was my last experience with pills, was when I tried ADD medicine, fresh into sobriety, and I just noticed myself taking 2 when I should have had 1, and I was like, you know what, I can't do this because I just can't trust myself with a stimulant like that. So, but some people can. I can't. I want to take another one if So
yeah. So you're clean of substances now.
Yeah, I don't mess around. I've definitely smoked pot in the last 9 years, and that's always been an interesting kind of relationship of its own. But that's the only thing I've messed with in the last, ever since I quit drinking and stuff. And yeah, I don't know. At coffee, smoked plenty of cigarettes, but try not to do that. So.
Yeah. I fucked around after I've been sober for a few years and smoked some weed, and I had not smoked weed in many years, and of course now the technology behind it is really profound, and kind of pitched over into an extended break with my sobriety. I had to go back and start over. It was not great, so I don't even smoke weed. So that's just me, though.
Wow, that's good. It's good to just take care of yourself.
Yeah. Well, I generally wind these interviews up with 10 questions. I know we're bumping up against the outside of your time limit, but if you've got time for that, I'd love to ask you these questions.
Sure. Okay. Go for it.
All right. They're sort of loosely based on the questions that they end inside the actor's studio with, but they're more specific to being a professional musician. So if you're up for it, we can jump in.
Sure. Go for it.
What's your fondest memory that you have of a meal that you've had?
Ever or recently?
Well, normally it's ever, but if there's one recently that really stands out, there's no hard, fast rules here.
Actually, a meal that really stands out is the last time not the last time I was in New York. About a little over a year ago, in New York City, I went to a great Italian restaurant with my bandmates, and we just had simple pasta, and it was incredible. It was, pesto linguine or something, really simple Italian food, but really good. That has stuck with me.
I wonder if it's the same. So I know that, so your dad's worked with David Immergluck, and David Immergluck took Victor Krummenacher, who was, they were in Monks of Doom together. Of course, Victor Krummenacher was in Camper Van Beethoven and the Monks of Doom, and now sometimes plays with Cracker. And of course, Immergluck worked with your dad. I wonder if, was it he was talking about a pasta place in New York City that was the best meal he'd had. I'm beginning to wonder if it's the same place, but he couldn't say the name. He couldn't talk about it because the woman was smuggling prosciutto into the country.
That's funny.
Yeah, and so he didn't want to blow her cover.
That's cool. Well, who knows? I feel like New York City is so full of amazing Italian restaurants. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some good ones for sure.
How did you find that place?
My drummer Kate suggested it. I don't know how she found it. She was just like, we could go here, and we did, and it was great. I can't remember what it was called. I have a card somewhere, but it was great.
I'm the guy in every band who's constantly pawing through Yelp reviews going, this place looks real. This looks like the real thing. I'm always like, hey, we can go to Denny's, but there's this Colombian place over here that has some kind of special Colombian breakfast. So I'm going to give that a whirl. And I'm always, I'm that guy on the road. So
it's always fun to have someone like that in your band. Somebody that's like, ooh, I found this unique spot to eat at. I always appreciate that because I love food, but I'm not always I don't know. I just kind of walk up and stumble on a place, and
yeah.
I like when there's the food person in the band. You're like, ooh, yeah, okay, I'll try that, sure.
Many years ago, I had handwritten back before the internet. I had like a tour book that I had put together of restaurants in the cities, because I did 200 shows a year for like 6 years, and there were vegans that I was traveling with sometimes, or vegetarians, or people who had special dietary needs. So I would just keep this like thing going, and I would photocopy it and give it to people. And I wish I'd kept that up. It was a lot of fun for a long time, but it kind of.
That's cool. That's fun.
Because
if you ever find it, send it over.
I will. Vegans get really hungry.
I know, they gotta eat.
Yeah.
My sister's a vegan. It's amazing. There's part of me that would really love to be a vegan, but then I'm just like, God, I love cheese though. I just can't give that cheese up.
Man, I started quarantine. We had gone off all animal protein at the beginning of 2020, and then it just got to a point where I'm making 3 meals a day. I've got a 10-year-old daughter, and she wants to eat breakfast every morning. And I've got a wife and me, and we're all kind of eating slightly different stuff. And after a point, it was like, I can't chop this many goddamn vegetables every day.
It's understandable.
Yeah, crushing garlic and ginger and like chopping cabbage, and it's just got to be too much.
Chickpeas all the time.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's I could imagine. There's definitely seems to be a lot of thoughtfulness that goes into being a vegan, which I admire. But yes, it's like, whoa.
I'm not a planner. I met this incredible guitar player named Micah who moved here from the West Coast, and he did some really heavy duty touring with some people out there. And we keep trying to get together, and I'm not a planner. Like, unless I have a tour manager going, all right, you got to be here tomorrow at 11 a.m. Like, I don't have a plan for tomorrow. And so, like, I have not hung out with Micah since like the first time we sort of ran into each other, because that's how I see people. I run into him, and he's like, all right, well, I've got some time in 2 weeks. And I'm like, yeah, I don't even know what 2 weeks if I'm going to be on this planet anymore. Like, So the vegan thing in quarantine wasn't really working out. Like, I knew if I could plan, like, all right, Tuesday we're going to have roasted chickpeas, and I could buy groceries. But it's always like, all right, what's in the cabinets? It's not a good fit. So we've fallen off the vegan wagon for now.
Well, I hear you. It happens.
Yeah. Well, you got to pick your wagons to fall off of. Don't fall off the big ones,
Yes.
Like,
agreed.
You can zigzag in and out of maybe having a cigarette every now and then, or being vegan, but I know the kind of things that'll like destroy my life, and I don't fall off that wagon.
There you go.
So the second question, you can answer one of two questions. Originally, the question was, "What's the most frightened you've ever been?" But early in this show, I had a young woman guest, and I asked her that question, and I got a look from her that said, "There's no way I'm going to tell you what the most frightened I've ever been is for a fucking podcast." Because as a guy, I hadn't really thought about some of the things that happen to women in society and how terrifying it can be. So I offer guests, especially women, the option of answering one of two questions for the second question. Either, what's the most frightened you've ever been, or tell me about a time you were braver than you ever thought you could be.
Well, those are both difficult questions to answer. I've never really considered either, honestly, and I don't know. I mean, I've been frightened many times. Braver than I thought I could be. I think the times I have felt maybe braver than I thought I could be is, I mean, honestly, not to be cliche, but like quitting drinking was maybe that, because I didn't really feel much courage to face anything prior. So, and I didn't see my life without a crush, the crush of alcohol. When I was kind of first hanging my head and going into AA, so, but it's been doable. So I don't know if that's a good answer. It's kind of a boring answer, but That might be it for me.
I mean, for anybody who's quit drinking, it's not boring because it's like firing your best friend.
Yeah, it's a weird parting of ways, but it's been a good one.
The first meeting, no one walks into their first meeting thinking one day at a time. You know, you walk into your first meeting thinking, I've got to give this up forever, and I'm not happy about it.
Yeah.
So it's really hard. And then, you know, you sort of become acquainted with the traditions, and you're like, oh, all right, well, I'm just going to do this for 24 hours. And then we'll see where we're at tomorrow.
Yeah, push on for another 24.
Yeah. Tell me about something you've lost in your life that you deeply regret losing.
Well, I have lost, that's a tricky one too, because I could talk about material things or relationships.
It's so funny.
I suppose, I know, it's like...
No, this question splits along those lines every time I ask it. Almost every time someone says, do you mean a material thing or a relationship? And I'm like, yes.
Well, that's the point of a question, is to be, like, evocative like that. But, I think for me, something that's been very hard for me to lose, but I think, has been a friendship, musical friendship that was, and a friendship outside of that was lost due to my, kind of novice approach to ending a musical relationship, where a friendship could have remained but didn't because of, the parting of ways or whatever. That's happened a few times, but there's a particular one that I miss dearly, and hopefully one day I'll gain it back again, So, yeah.
What is the time you received an act of kindness from a stranger?
Well, let's see here. I've had many. Trying to think of a recently compelling one. I had a guy that liked my music just send me some great books in the middle of this quarantine, and that was awesome. So,
what books were they?
I'll go with that. The one I just read is called Normal People by an author, Sally Rooney, I think is her name.
Yeah, I just heard about this book.
It's good. I read it in like 2 days, and I've got another one. I can't remember what it's called, but I'm going to read that soon. But yeah, it was just a really nice little escape, and she's a young author, and cool. Liked the book a lot.
I feel like we used to trade books a lot more back in the 90s when we were all on tour, and like we'd read all the books in the van, and then we'd run into another band and we'd all swap books. Man,
that's fun.
I think it was the Archers of Loaf that gave us the book The Mambo Kings Sing Songs of Love, which was like it was such a great book, but the ending of it is so incredibly sad that it just like one by one it took a member of the band down. Like every 2 weeks we just like be destroyed by that book.
That's the thing about a book. They can really stay with you.
Yeah.
So,
what's your favorite place to gig?
I love playing in New York City. It's always really fun. And I always see friends that I haven't seen from like places that aren't, that people that are just there, they don't even live there, pop up at a show or something. And I haven't had a fun time playing in New York, honestly. So I'll go with that.
Is there a particular venue?
Well, there are so many cool venues there. No, I've played at so many there, and they've all been awesome for different reasons.
Yeah.
So, but But yeah, it's like magical in New York. You never know what's going to happen there.
No, it's true. So visa and income considerations aside, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
I would live somewhere in Italy. I can't decide if in a mountainous region up north or somewhere on the coast. Preferably near the ocean. I haven't done enough narrowing down to know exactly what city, but I've been to Italy a few times. Spent a good amount of time there, actually, and have always fallen in love with it every time I've been there. So.
Yeah, they seem to kind of grasped the essentials of living a good life there.
Yes, exactly. So...
Do you have an ideal musical instrument? And if so, do you already own it or not?
Yeah, guitar is totally ideal for me. It makes complete sense. And I have four or five of them. So.
Is there a particular guitar? I know you like your Rick. I've seen you play that a lot.
I do love that guitar. I have a Gibson. It's like a mini J200 that I love. I have a Martin that I love. So I love them all differently, but equally.
Yeah.
So.
Is there an instrument that you've lost because it was stolen or you had to pawn it or it got left behind at a venue that you desperately wish you could have back?
No, but I did give an ex-boyfriend like a hollow body harmony that was just given to me because like the harmony reps were like, hey, you can have one of these. And I was like, great. And I gave it to him, and I don't know why, and I wish I had it still. But I don't think about it too much, really. But sometimes I'm like, damn, I wish I had that. So
I got a flannel shirt like that. I wish I could get back from an ex. I just should have never let that thing get away.
Yeah, you're like, why did I do that?
It was a really good color, and it was so soft, and yeah. I'm sure it's probably been donated to charity by now. I've been married to my wife for almost 20 years now. But, man, every now and then I think, like, the wind gets a little nippy and it's a little cool and it's a little damp. And I think, I wish I had that shirt.
Yeah,
I
hear you.
Who made it. Like, I'll never find it again. It bums me out. But, all right. If you could be a guest with and perform with any artist and play any song, who would that be, and what song would it be?
Oh, well, I would really, really love to sing with Eddie Vedder. That has been a long-time dream.
Oh, really?
I would love to sing with Pearl Jam. I'd love to sing with them. And I would love to sing like Black with Pearl Jam. I love that song so much. It's so pretty. And yeah, I think it would be a cool song to sing.
Yeah, you know, they used to come to Atlanta to record with Brendan O'Brien. And
oh yeah, yes.
Yeah, and so that Southern Tracks is closed now, but man, the Southern Tracks board is at another studio here now called Madison Studios, and a bunch of the microphones went there too. But yeah, they used to sort of be around. You know, you'd run into them, and they were always super cool, just real gentlemen.
That's cool. It's always good to hear.
Yeah, isn't that nice when you find out an artist that you like isn't a horrible person?
Yes, for sure.
I mean, I understand how it happens, you know? Like, one of the sort of core assumptions of this podcast is that we all know that being in a band isn't a vacation, and that the more demands that success puts on you, it can really like mess with your fundamental assumptions about yourself. It's really hard to be successful as an artist because it's hard, because you're not home, and it's collaborative. And if you have someone in your band with a personality disorder, or God forbid you have one yourself, like, it just gets magnified. It becomes part of your daily life until you just get bent into a caricature of the person that you thought you were, you know?
Yeah, that can happen. But yeah, it doesn't have to happen, though, I don't think.
All right, so the last question. If you could imagine a taxi that can go anywhere in time or to any place, and you get into the taxi and you say to the driver, "Hey, man, take me home." Where's home?
Like back in time, you're asking? To any time?
Yeah.
It's hard to say where home is. Home to me is in my van on the road, really. So, like, I guess to my van on the highway.
Is there a particular, like, is there a van parked outside the house right now?
Yeah, I have a van. I have, like, a big white Ford.
The Econoline?
No, it's a Transit.
Oh, you got one of the new ones. Is it 15 passenger or 12?
It's 15.
Oh, man, I'm so jealous right now. You have no idea. I've been playing with this Japanese punk band that comes over here from Tokyo, and they come without a drummer, and so I'm their drummer when they're in the U.S., and part of my job, since I'm the one who speaks the best English, by a little, is to go find vans so we can go do shows. And so part of my job is to hunt down a suitable van whenever we have a string of dates and find a way to pay for it. And, they're a punk band. They're not making a ton of money, so it's always a job, and it's always challenging. But I really, I have fond memories and horror stories of every kind of, Dodge Ram, Ford Econoline, Chevy Safari, like whatever we ended up in. I've been there in it. And here's an issue question. Do you prefer van or bus touring?
Well, I've only been on other people's buses, so I hope to get on a bus, but for now I'm in my van. And I've driven a lot of shitty vans before I had a nice van. So, I think there's pros and cons to both. Honestly, I think, in a van you get to see everything. In a bus, you're not as worn out from driving all the time.
Yeah.
So
the thing about the bus I like is that it's the biggest thing on the road, right? Somebody crosses the center line at 2 a.m. after a show and hits you head on. The bus is going to win. You might get banged up, but, it could be worse. But the other side of that coin is the bus is this machine that goes from the venue to the hotel, to the venue, to the hotel, to the venue, to the hotel. And if you want to go, like if you're in Nashville and you want to go to Gruen, you got to like get an Uber or like find somebody local that to take you over. I go to Gruen because I consider it to be like the nice guitar petting zoo. Like I'm not going to take one home any more than I would like take a goat home from like a petting zoo because I can't afford Gruen, but I like to go pet the guitars. Yeah.
Well, cool.
I'm really grateful you're able to do this. I really enjoy your work.
Thank you.
And
appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope that we can like play some shows together at some point. I'm sure it'll happen. Yeah, I don't even know what happens. Like the Japanese punk band, which is great. The female lead singer, she plays bass. She's plays a little EBO like Gibson short scale because she's tiny, but super high energy and super talented. And then like the best guitar player I've ever played with, the George, the guitar player. They're great, and I think you would really enjoy them. But I don't think that I think their visa's going to run out before the COVID does. So I don't know what happens.
That sucks. What's their name? I'll check them out.
You're going to love this. They're called Pinky Doodle Poodle.
Nice. Well, I'm going to remember that. Hey, I'm going to run. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Are
of
we
course.
Good?
Yeah, we're good, man.
Okay.
All right.
It's been great to talk to you, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, you're awesome. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Have a good one.
All right, Lilly Hiatt. Man, she seems cool. I like her a lot. Her new album, Walking Proof, is out now. You should check it out. Hopefully she can get out on the road, just like all of us need to get out on the road and play some shows. And if she does come to your town, you got to go see Lilly. She's great. I want to thank Jake Kreger. Jake is the de facto producer of the show. He was the first ever guest on Crash and Ride, and ever since then he's helped me make the show better by sending me show notes. We talk at least like every other day, and he tells me what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. And he also created and maintains the Crash and Ride YouTube channel, so thank you, Jake, for your steadfast support and guidance. I also want to thank Gene Wolfolk and the band The Powder Room. The Powder Room provided all of the music that you heard on today's show, the intro, the bumper, the music underneath my voice now. All of that is from The Powder Room's first two records, Lucky and Curtains, both of which can be found at thepowderroom.bandcamp.com. I should also tell you that Gene is now partnered with Erica Strout from the band Motherfucker, and they are producing amazing, like, synth-driven dream pop with a little bit of shoegaze mixed in under the name Dream Tent, DREAMTENT. Their first full-length record should drop any day now at dreamtent.bandcamp.com. It is a huge departure from their shared noise rock heritage, and yet it is somehow both perfect and beautiful, and it's just so good. dreamtent.bandcamp.com. Go check it out. There's already a couple of songs up there, and like I said, that full link should be out any day. I also want to thank our Patreon subscribers at patreon.com/crashandride. You can sign up to make a small $5 or $10 monthly donation to help keep the program going. That money is keeping my little family in grits and groceries right now, so I'm very grateful for it. Thank you all so much. If you need to reach me, you can always email the show at crashandride@protonmail.com. That's crashandride@protonmail.com. That email is private. It's encrypted. Nobody checks it but me. I will always protect your anonymity at all costs. I will never say your name on the air unless you give me express permission. crashandride@protonmail.com. Thanks again, you kind people who have left such nice reviews at the Apple Podcast site. I don't know how to thank you, except to just keep doing shows as best as I can. I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to get to do this and that people care. So thank you so much. I hope that you're doing okay. I know a lot of folks are struggling right now. Don't be afraid to use the resources I've talked about on the show. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Nutrispace, Backline. They're all there to help, so reach out if you need to. And until we speak again, take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. Ask for help if you need it. Go see live music if you can do it in a way that is safe. Support your favorite band, and remember, loud guitars save lives.